And the other thing that actually a lot of people don't talk about is the production of a drug called Khat. And this is a natural plant. And in Yemen, it is very common that you work until lunch, and then after lunch, you and your friends, you have a long lunch and you chew Khat. And Khat is this sort of stimulant. It's very popular in Yemen. It's popular in Saudi Arabia. And
I tried it. It's absolutely disgusting. Have you tried it?
I have never tried Khat.
It is disgusting. It's not only vile, but also it's incredibly addicting. And I think it's reasonably expensive.
Well, it is. And it's very profitable. So a lot of Yemeni farmers have stopped growing things like fruit. And I believe 90% of their agricultural production today is Khat.
I mean, to be fair, who needs to eat when you're all effed up on Khat? So, you know.
Well, supposedly that's one of the reasons the Houthi rebels are such good fighters. They take Khat and it turns them into supermen. And these guys, they want to go fight.
I guess the problem arises when you want to do something boring like raise a successful family and you can't feed them only eating and drinking Khat. So you need food for that as well.
You're absolutely right. And one of the issues that the Houthi rebels have had is they've had a cholera outbreak. Now, it's very easy. Everyone wants to be a rebel until you actually have to rule, right? So there was a massive cholera outbreak relatively recently. I believe it was in 2016 in Houthi-controlled areas because they weren't taking out the trash. They weren't providing clean water and sanitation. It's really easy to take over a government. It's not so hard to provide services to your people once you actually do so.
Right, it's not so easy to do that. Yeah, exactly. It's far easier to blow something up than to go, hey, we need to rebuild that dam and that water treatment plant. It's usually, no, we actually need to buy more ammo to blow up some more stuff instead.
Or they get that ammunition from Iran.
Right. So Saudi Arabia bombing the crap out of these guys with cluster munitions and other things sold to them from the West, which is not great. It's a real are we the baddies moment, I suppose. But they're also not doing that well because Houthis, I don't know what it is, if they're getting kick-ass weapons from Iran or whatever, but Saudi Arabia is kind of wet in the bed when it comes to beating them because this has been going on for a long time. And if they have F-15s and Houthis are launching sort of whatever kind of rockets, what's the problem here?
There's a number of problems, and a lot of it goes back to kind of how the Saudi Arabian military is structured. With the Saudi Arabian military, what you have are they like to buy a lot of toys. I mean, you take a look at Saudi Arabia, it has a coastline that's roughly 1,600 miles long on both sides of Saudi Arabia. You'd think they'd have a great navy, right? I think they got 7 frigates, about 20 or so patrol boats or corvettes, and some smaller boats. And you would think like, oh, we should invest in a navy, but you can't really show off a frigate to your friends, right? So you buy fighter planes. Fighter planes are cool. And most of the pilots in Saudi Arabia are part of the ruling families. So how are you going to tell a ruling family, no, we want your son to be a ship captain or serve on a ship, not a fighter pilot, right? So they put a lot of their money into toys, into F-15s, into Eurofighters, into the Tornado, and they didn't really concentrate on the simple stuff like giving night vision devices to all their soldiers. So Saudi Arabia, they do have, at the low level, they have highly motivated soldiers, but they don't really know how to use them, and those soldiers aren't as well equipped as their Air Force. Well, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
So we're going to use the Air Force to hammer the heck out of the Houthis, but unfortunately you can't bomb an ideology. You have to go in with infantry and stop them. And the Saudis were in a coalition with the UAE, Sudan, Egypt, a couple, I believe Syria was part of that coalition at one point. But for the most part, it's the UAE and it is Saudi Arabia. And the UAE has actually done much better on the ground. And a lot of that is due to the leadership in that country. They're a little more serious about having a good ground force.
Wow, you definitely don't think, well, one, I should say, I don't think of the UAE as a military force. I think of Dubai, and I'm like, oh, it's like if you told me Las Vegas had a kick-ass special forces group, I would be, I wouldn't even know what to do with that.
No, they have a fairly good military, and they have a lot of foreign contractors that come in and they teach them Blackwater, or whatever name they call themselves now. I think they were Z for a while, and then they're Akamai, and I don't I don't know what Blackwater calls himself now, but they all call themselves Blackwater. They often teach in the UAE, and so they have a pretty good ground force. But Saudi Arabia, like I said, they push a lot of their money into their air force, and like I said, you can't bomb an ideology.
So they're not doing well in Yemen, and the Houthis seem to be gaining some steam. Why? In fact, one of the earliest things that I'd seen from them in a few years, because I didn't follow the war super closely, was they just started shooting missiles over Saudi Arabia at Israel. So why are they doing this? Are they just sort of like solidarity with my Muslim brothers, or what? Because I don't know if I would. I mean, look, I'm not a rebel army commander, but it seems like a really bad idea to pull someone else into the conflict who also has an effective military by shooting over another country that's already bombing me.
You would think that, but who's pulling the strings? Iran is pulling the strings. Now, they're getting these missiles, both cruise missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles. They're getting those from Iran. And I believe Iran's goal here is to get the Houthis to shut down the Red Sea. If you shut down traffic in the Red Sea, maybe there will be world pressure on Israel to stop what they're doing in Gaza. Iran can't afford an aircraft carrier. Iran can't afford battle groups. Iran can't send multiple divisions of troops overseas, but they can fund terror and they can fund proxies. And if you can fund a proxy that will do that stuff for you, then maybe you don't need an aircraft carrier.
That makes some sense. I suppose it's probably cheaper. What is this part of asymmetric warfare? Like when you hack something, you're just like, also, hey, we'll fund this proxy military with stuff because we don't need to really suffer the cost if they die, and we can just basically arm these guys and train them. Are they going to Iran to train, or does Iran send people there to train them like Green Beret style?
It goes both ways. Iran will send people over. They'll send people to Iran. Another thing that the Houthis have as a capability is cyber warfare. Iran has launched cyber attacks against Saudi Arabian oil interests, trying to shut down terminals or trying to shut down pipelines or trying to shut down production centers. And they perform those actions with Houthi rebels and with teams in Iran coordinating together.